Welcome to An Alternate Hue. I'm Hugh Anderson, and this is a special edition of An Alternate Hue. It's a three-parter. I'm going to give you my summer book report, and we're going to talk about everybody's favorite subject, climate change. That's right. Climate change continues to dominate the news cycle, corporate policy, and most importantly, your investments. Over the next several alternative hues, I'm going to discuss Unsettled, a book by Stephen E. Koonin. He's the former Undersecretary for Science in the U.S. Department of Energy under the Obama administration. Having come of age in the 70s, I always had a keen interest in the energy industry, especially since one of my first cars got 4 miles to the gallon. No problem when gas was 25 cents a gallon, but became a bit of a pinch on the budget at $1.25. Of course, there was the Chernobyl disaster during that time, and that left a very bad taste in everybody's mouth regarding nuclear energy, which is considered one of the cleanest energies we could be using, but because of their bad PR, we're not using it as much. So this book report, if you will, is just going to lay out the points as Dr. Koonin describes them. So in this environment of shrill media reporting and unsubstantiated internet commentary, and opinions being shouted louder than facts, I thought it was high time to get the latest view from a credible source. So let's begin with Koonin's basic premise. It's true the science indicates the planet is warming, and humans are influencing that warming process. But he goes on to say, I don't think the science says what we think it says. Research literature and government reports that summarize and assess the state of climate science says clearly that heat waves in the U.S. are now no more common than they were in 1900, and that the warmest temperatures in the U.S. have not risen in the past 50 years. I write this as the temperature outside my window is 115 degrees. Here are 3 more climate facts you probably haven't heard on the evening news. Number 1, humans have had no detectable impact on hurricanes over the past century. Keep that in mind as the hurricane season starts up later this fall. Number 2, Greenland's ice sheet isn't shrinking any more rapidly today than it was 80 years ago. And 3, the net economic impact of human-induced climate change will be minimal through at least the end of this century. So let's think about that a minute. Climate is not weather. I repeat, climate is not weather. Weather is variable day to day and hour to hour. Climate, on the other hand, is the average of a particular location's weather over many decades. I recently went to New York with an individual, my daughter's boyfriend, who had never been back east for the good weather. And he was amazed at how green and beautiful it was and why anybody would not live there. Meanwhile, it had rained continuously for 3 weeks prior to that. That's climate. Climate is what you expect, and weather is what you get. So if you go to a Southern California beach, you're expecting beautiful, balmy temperatures. That's climate. You may get a cold, rainy day. That's weather. Climate trends are highly dependent upon the time span being considered. So beware of cherry-picking one's data to support a case, which happens all the time. So on August 13, 2019, the Washington Post published a front-page story under the headline, Extreme Climate Change Has Arrived in America. We've heard that many times before. It's very familiar. If one were to read the article, one would find that experts identify urban heat effects and changing air pollution levels are culprits, and those are obvious human impacts. But if you keep reading, you will also see cited ocean currents, events like the Dust Bowl, and natural climate events like El Nino. The UN Framework Convention on Climate Change defines climate change as, and I am so sorry for this definition, but it was written by scientists and/or lawyers or anybody else who likes to put people to sleep, a change of climate which is attributed directly or indirectly to human activity that alters the composition of the global atmosphere and which is in addition to natural climate variability observed over comparable time periods. But please note that that definition specifically excludes changes due to natural causes. So this causes the average person to assume human impact whenever they hear the term climate change. It's always our fault. Just ask Jerry Springer. So let's learn a little science. This should be relatively painless. Energy that flows in and out of the climate system is measured in watts per square meter. Sunlight is absorbed by the Earth, and the heat is radiated back, and it averages 239 watts per square meter. Got that? Just think of a box where heat's going in and heat's coming back out. Well, if you think about a 100-watt incandescent light bulb that emits 100 watts of energy, which implies that two common light bulbs are approximately equivalent to the amount of heat radiated by the Earth out of that box we just talked about. And that's natural. Humans, according to Kunin, influence just 2 watts per square meter. So taking this a step further, human heat can definitely affect the local climates such as near power plants and in cities, but averaged across the whole planet, human heat amounts to 0.03 watts per square meter. That's 10,000 times smaller than the natural heat flows of the climate system. The natural heat flows. So that's it for this segment. I'll pick up where we left off later in our next segment. But until next time, this has been An Alternate Hue, and I'm glad you could join me.